Hello and welcome to Hindsighting, where we discuss all the movies to win the Best Picture Oscar and try to figure out if this picture truly is the best or if time rendered a different verdict. I'm Edward Clow. My guest today is a published novelist whose books include Girl in Development, Camp Rules, and Moms Like Us. She's also a screenwriter and TV writer-producer. She was a co-producer on the freeform thriller The Watchful Eye and adapted the Korean hit Oh My Ghost into a supernatural dramedy for Blumhouse/Studio Dragon. Currently, she's adapting Moms Like Us for MGM as a television show. Jordan Roeder, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Today, we're hindsighting the Best Picture of 1983, Terms of Endearment. From 11 nominations, it also won Oscars for Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Actress, and Best Supporting Actor. It was nominated against The Big Chill, The Dresser, The Right Stuff, and Tender Mercies. So, Jordan, I think the 80s was an incredible decade. And what I've been talking about in all these episodes, I feel like it was such an incredible time. And I don't know that that's represented necessarily in these Best Picture winners and in these Best Picture nominees. I'm not saying it's not, but that's sort of the thing that I'm sort of interrogating this season. Today's movie I have seen before, but only very recently. I mean, well, recently, relatively speaking. I saw this about 12 years ago, so it isn't something that I saw when I was younger. This was always a bit of a gap for me, but I have seen it before. I, of course, watched it again for today's episode. But the 80s in general, I think Terms of Endearment is actually still a really good example of what's so great about the 80s in general is that I feel like every genre is really strong. Like we have a lot of really strong grown-up dramas like Terms of Endearment. This is probably the most incredible decade for action ever. I'd say the same thing about comedy ever. Horror, I think a lot of people would argue this is sort of the best time for horror. So those genres are all good. And I think what's also incredible is that all these things are being done by major studios. Independent film does exist in this time, but it really doesn't start crossing over till right at the end of this decade with Sex, Lies, and Videotape and Do the Right Thing. So we're really talking about, for the most part, major studio releases. And there's things for grown-ups, there's things for kids, there's things for all the ages in between. And it's something I was very young in this decade, and I saw some of these movies, and some of these movies I saw when I was older. But I would really love to be living in this decade now in terms of the amount of quality and where it's coming from. So I'm going to throw this to you. What, if any, is your feeling about the 80s as a decade for movies?
Okay, so in the 80s, so I was born in 1975. So the 80s for me, I mean, that was when I started understanding movies, when I started going through puberty, when I became a teenager.
Mm-hmm. And
for me, the 80s will always be the greatest decade of movies, and especially for comedies. And I really mourn the loss of the comedies that don't make total sense. The comedies that like don't dot every T and don't answer every studio note.
Yeah.
And I really, those screwball comedies that you can still get away with if you're Adam Sandler, but you cannot get away with if you are anyone else.
Yeah.
Or that's my experience. Maybe you just can't get away with it as me. But
no, I think you're right. I think
yeah.
I think you're definitely right about that in general.
But so for me, the 80s just, I mean, agree with you that it's the gold standard of movie making. I think it was also, there was a respect for movies. There was a need for movies. There weren't other options like streaming or staring at your phone.
Okay, so on to Terms of Endearment, but first some stats. This is a stat that's come up a lot in the last couple episodes. This is the first feature for James L. Brooks as a director, which puts him on the list of other directors' debut movies winning Best Picture, along with Delbert Mann, who won for Marty, Jerome Robbins for West Side Story, Robert Redford for Ordinary People, Hugh Hudson for Chariots of Fire, Kevin Costner for Dances with Wolves, and Sam Mendes for American Beauty. This is a cool stat. I think you'll like this. This is one of only 5 films to receive 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Actress. So 2 nominations in Best Actress. The other 4 are All About Eve, which was Anne Baxter and Bette Davis. Suddenly Last Summer in 1959, which was Katharine Hepburn and Elizabeth Taylor. The Turning Point, also Shirley MacLaine and Anne Bancroft. And the last one, which you can maybe guess, is Thelma and Louise, Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon. MacLaine is the only one to win an Oscar out of all those matchups. Jack Nicholson received his Oscar from Timothy Hutton, who later married and divorced Deborah Winger. Did you know that?
I did not.
I didn't know that either. Jack Nicholson holds the record for the highest number of Oscar nominations for a male with 12. This is the 3rd time Shirley MacLaine has starred in a Best Picture winner. She also starred in Around the World in 80 Days and The Apartment. At 2 hours and 12 minutes, it is number 55 in ascending length, number 56 if you count Sunrise, which we'll litigate if that counts in a later episode. It is number 32 on the box office list of best picture winners with a worldwide gross of 165 million. So let's get into it. Terms of Endearment.
So, Terms of Endearment, I saw, I believe, as a teenager, and I remember it being sad. I remember it being, entertaining to watch. I don't remember much more than that. And I watched it recently, preparing for this, and so Shirley MacLaine in that movie, at least as the actress, they never talk about her exact age in the movie, but the actress at that time, she was 49 when she was cast as that role. I just turned 50.
Okay.
So for me to watch that as like having grown up on like, she's the grandma, she's the old lady who Jack Nicholson is taking pity on, it was like, oh my God, seeing how perceptions of women have changed, but also, how beautiful it was that this movie was celebrating this woman kind of coming into her own in her 50s, even though they never talk about her age.
Well, I'm sorry, they actually do, because remember there was a scene, just to shed some more light on what you're talking about, there's a scene maybe halfway through where she's having dinner with I guess it's her boyfriend. It's that guy she kind of just jerks around. It's not really her boyfriend.
And Danny DeVito. And it's her birthday, but they don't say what number.
No, but she says 50, and the doctor says, like, Aurora, you can't be lying about your age. You're 52. And then,
right.
So so she's 50. So the character, you're right about McLean's age.
Yes.
She was 49 when she made this, which is staggering on a number of levels.
Yes.
But yeah, I believe Aurora is 52, but that's still very, very young.
Yes. Oh my God. I mean, I have a teenager or two teenagers. Like, I just like the idea of having grandkids at this age. I understand why she reacted the way that she reacted. But so also I have, as a mother of a teenage daughter who I'm very close to, this movie just broke me.
Yeah.
Like, and I knew the ending, I know exactly what's going to happen, but that journey, and those characters and the love story and the love story between her and her daughter. And it just, and it was really, I was very much blown away by it. And I was also saddened by the notion that you can't make a movie like that anymore.
Yeah.
In many ways, it felt a little unfinished. It felt choppy. Like, it felt like in today's standards to me, because I feel like today you would get like, oh, it feels a little episodic.
Well, James L. Brooks is from television. It's
Yes.
worth noting, James L. Brooks was already, a huge figure in television. He was already producing, he worked on Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah.
I believe he worked on Taxi. I mean, he already had, this is a couple years before The Simpsons, but James L. Brooks, this is a very successful TV producer who's making his first movie. So I think you're onto something with the episodic nature of it, but I don't think you're saying this either. I don't see that as a weakness, but I completely agree that you'd get that note.
Yes. I think in today's world of note-a-palooza, where, everyone has to give notes, the producers and everyone wants their fingerprints on it.
Yeah.
I don't think it felt raw in a beautiful way to me. It felt like obviously thoughtful, and so many people were involved in it, but it felt pure.
Yeah.
In a way that it's so hard to make a movie now that way, given the system. And, if you can even get it made by a studio, then it's either something huge and there's so many different fingerprints on it.
Yeah.
Or it's, an indie film, but even those are fraught.
Yeah.
So to me, it felt so authentic and so not what we would get to see today.
Yeah.
And I just, it was so meaningful for me to see it as a middle-aged woman who has a daughter, and also, has been married for 20 years. So looking at that marriage of, and also seeing what later in life love looks like,
Mm,
which I don't think was something that was explored then in a
no.
way that it is now. There's so many like second act stories now, which
Right.
is really what that is for her. And so I just seeing this now um, was very meaningful to me. And also I want to mention that so I write screenplays, but I also write novels and I adapt novels
Mhm.
for the screen.
Have you read this book?
And I have not read it yet, but I did a little bit of research on it because I was so fascinated after watching it
Right.
and then doing some of the research, and still to this day, um, there are all these articles saying it's like the best book adaptation of all time.
Really?
And so that's really interesting to me, is like going back and reading the book and seeing what James L. Brooks
Yeah.
took, and what I think from what I understand, he brought more of the James L. Brooks, that feel good, that,
Sure.
and apparently, the I forgot the name of her character in
Aurora?
Aurora. Aurora's character was not as likable in the book. She
Mm,
was much more uh she just wasn't, she didn't have the sense of humor. She didn't have, so
right.
this was, and it was much drier, apparently, the book. Like
Yeah.
there was such a sense of humor and such a warmth in that mother-daughter relationship that apparently was not in the book. And apparently also that there was more to the Jack Nicholson Aurora relationship in
Mm.
the movie than in the book.
Yeah. A term I use a lot. Well, sorry, a term I thought about a lot watching it. And I thought about this. So I saw this for the first time about 12 years ago, but before I had any kids. I was already married. And my kids are much younger than the kids in this movie. But I guess I'm closer to I mean, you and I are very close in age. I'm only 3 years younger than you, but my kids, I guess, are closer to Deborah Winger's kids' age. So the movie hit me hard on that level,
Yeah.
thinking about little kids. I
Yeah.
mean, the oldest son has my son's haircut,
Yeah.
because my son has a very early '80s haircut.
Yeah.
It's either back in style or something he's
Yeah.
insisting on. But so yeah, I think I liked it then, but in the 12 years since, I've had two kids and lost my parents, and I just have a whole different. This is true of a lot of movies. I mean, a lot of these movies that I've covered on this podcast, only three are things that I've never seen before, including the last two Best Picture winners that we covered, Gandhi and Chariots. But most of these things are things I'm revisiting after 20, 25, 10 years. So it's like, oh, this is true of any movie, to be Captain Obvious about it. It's like, oh, when you see something when you're at one stage of life and you see it when you're older, even if it's nothing to do with family or marriage, it's still, your perspective changes. And that's, even if the movie's not good, you have a different take on it. But the term I kept thinking about watching it again the other day was lived in. Everything about this movie feels really lived in. And this is the kind of thing that could have been oppressive, because there's the Deborah Winger character and her family, they're struggling financially. They're not impoverished, but they're definitely working class, if you want to slap a label on it. And there's just so many little details about this movie and the production design and the costuming that are just so specific. And I think that that's one of the many things that a good director brings to it. I think that the lived in details of not just the physical things, also the relationships. I mean, I think that the key relationship in this movie is obviously the one between Emma and Aurora. I think they do a lot of, I think James L. Brooks is so great at like showing us a lot with a little. Like the very opening shot of this movie, when it's just Aurora checking in on baby Emma to see, oh, I'm afraid of crib death, and she like wakes her up and the baby's crying, and that just speaks volumes. And that's the kind of thing, like, if you think about the first page of like a screenplay and you like how much you want to set up and how
Well, and I
little
think
time
she
you have.
says, "I feel better."
Yeah.
once the baby starts crying. I
Right.
feel better.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I think
Oh.
she says something like that, or she says exactly that. I'm trying to, but she says,
Oh,
she's
yeah.
because her husband says, "Come back to bed," and she's like, "I feel better now that the baby's crying," and she closes the door.
Yeah.
You know, and that says everything.
And the husband's off screen, which I don't think is misandrist in any way, because the husband's going to die in the
Yes.
interim, and he's only
In the
important.
credits.
We never get a look at the husband because he doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All we need to know is that this woman was married. You know, he died after maybe 15, 20 years, whatever it was. And that wasn't quite clear the timeline. I think this movie does an incredible job, and it's such a simple thing. And this is another thing as a writer that I struggle with sometimes, of just charting the time, because this movie takes place over, I don't know, like 15 or 20 years. I mean, most of it is sort of within 2 or 3 years, but you know, just by charting Deborah Winger's age in the beginning, but also her kid's age. It's like, Mom, I'm pregnant, and then you see the baby, and then it's like, Mom, I'm pregnant again, and then the baby, and it seems so simple, but that's the kind of thing that's just so easy to fuck up and be so easy to confuse about. Like, well, how many kids does she have? Like, where are they now? And I think this, you know, he does such a great job with just charting sort of these events in their lives. And a thing I forgot about from the last time I watched this, I forgot that Aurora did not go to Emma's wedding. I remember that she didn't think much of Flap, and Flap fucking sucks. We'll get way into that.
Yeah.
But I did not remember that she just boycotted the wedding, which is such a great.
Yeah, I was shocked that we didn't see the wedding without her there.
Well, I actually think that's also a bit of like, I mean, maybe that's a budgetary constraint.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
don't show the wedding. You see them in like, she's in her dress, he's in his. We
I
don't
know.
need to
I
see the
was
wedding.
so surprised. I was watching it and I was so surprised because I was like, "Is this before the wedding or is this after the wedding?" Like, and she does say, "I can't believe my mom didn't come" or whatever. But
Right.
it was. I just was like, "No," but like, is she getting ready for the wedding? Like, I thought we'd see the wedding because in everything we see the wedding.
Yeah.
The wedding's the big thing.
Yeah, even back then.
Yeah, even back, especially back then. But
Yeah.
but I think that was part of the charm of the movie it was about the smaller emotional moments, not the big moments,
Absolutely.
not the wedding, not the graduation, not the funeral. And I think that's the beauty of the movie is those quiet moments and what makes it unique to, I think, that time period, because it's harder to make a movie like that, especially a studio movie like that right now.
Yeah, and this goes back to sort of my thesis is that this is Paramount, and
Yeah.
there was 8 or 9 studios back then, and there were no co-pros or any of these things like that, and this movie was a big hit.
Yeah.
And if you were to look at, as I've done sometimes, if you were to look at the opening weekend, it probably was very modest, if not small. But I remember, and we're very similar in age. I remember movies playing for like 6 months,
Yeah.
sometimes even a year. And especially a movie like this, they probably just kept it out a long time, and people heard about it. And then it got a bunch of Oscar nominations, and then that helped. And then it won a bunch of Oscars, and then that, so they just would stand behind things. And we're at the beginning of home video. We're at the beginning of cable. We're at the beginning of like this, sort of long and second life for a movie, even if it's a hit, where people can still come and, still find it. There's a line I like, I'm jumping around, but I think just before that, where she pulls her daughter into her bedroom to basically say, "Don't marry Flap." I think it's in this scene. I wrote the line down. I think I had the scene correct, where she says, "You are not special. You are not special enough to overcome a bad marriage." So brutal, but I think it's a great line of dialogue, and I think it's interesting because obviously when you watch this for the first time, you think, "Oh, well, that's just a really bitchy thing to do. That's so not what you would see." But I don't know, Flap does suck. And yeah, she wouldn't have these 3 kids, but I do wonder, like, I mean, there'd be no movie if she listened to Aurora, but I do think that Aurora had this guy's number pretty early.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that she would have said that no matter who she were marrying, or do you think she just really didn't like this guy?
So a couple things. Number one, I think it is 100% consistent with that first scene that we see about her making her cry in her crib because she was afraid she'd die. So she'd rather she be crying than have herself worry that she's, that she's dead in the crib.
Right.
So I think it's very on brand for that character. And we're 5 minutes into the movie.
Totally.
We already know who this character is, that she would say, he's not right for you, and he is not just not right for you, but he's not enough.
Right.
And I think what's underneath that, for me at least, what I read into it is you're not ready.
Right.
Like you, and I think maybe, she didn't articulate it correctly, which is, I don't think what she was saying is that she's not special enough. I think what she was saying is like she's not special enough yet. Like
Mm,
she hasn't lived into her life. She hasn't become herself. And
right.
I think that she wants that for her. I think she wants her, and I think also, and I saw this in my own mom when I was growing up in the 80s. Moms in that age, they really wanted to live through their daughters who seemed to have a little bit more independence than they had growing up, let's say in the 50s.
Mm,
And so and now, we're told as moms, and we get so much information about how to be better moms, is like, your daughter is a separate individual, and don't say like when I was that age. It's very
yeah.
much like keeping it separate. And I think Aurora is doing both. I think she's trying to live through Emma and, have the right marriage that doesn't end in a death or doesn't end in marrying a big loser.
Mm,
And at the same time, she is wanting to protect her, wanting to live through her. And I think those things that's where that is coming from. I
yeah.
think the way she articulates it to her is harsh.
It's interesting what you said about how he made Aurora more sympathetic than she is in the book, because that's something I talked a lot about. And I'm not comparing these, I'm just comparing them on the basis of Best Picture winners and moms. I talked a lot about in our Ordinary People episodes that how the Mary Tyler Moore character, who's so cold and in so much pain, and what a great job that movie did by still making her a three-dimensional character, even though it would have been very easy to just dismiss her as the villain, which a lot of people still do. But I think that this is a little bit different because we're not yet dealing, unlike that movie, we're not yet dealing with anything as heavy as the death of a child and the attempted suicide of another child. We're not dealing with anything like emergent.
Mhm.
And I think that's because this movie takes place over so many different years. This movie takes place over such a long period of time. It feels more real.
Mhm.
And these issues are all very much on planet Earth. These are
Mhm.
all relatable for the most part.
Mhm.
Whether you're in a relationship like this or your best friend is and you're on the 50-yard line. So I think that's what's so interesting about this movie is that it's so relatable.
What that speaks to is what got it Best Picture, which is that you have these wildly flawed characters
Yeah.
who are so relatable
Mhm.
to so in so many different ways, whether you're a woman, whether you're a mother, whether you're a daughter, whether you're a husband. Like there's so much to take, or a bachelor, there's so much to take in and consider and connect to, because it's so human.
Mhm.
And they say things they shouldn't, and they do things they shouldn't.
Right.
And and you also are on this journey over, like what you were saying about this time period, and you go on this journey with them, that you feel an investment in the relationship.
Mhm.
You want to prove Aurora wrong. You want it to work. So when you start seeing their relationship falling apart, which in my mind happened quite quickly. Like today, if you made that movie, they'd need to see, I think, other steps to get to it. Like suddenly he wasn't coming home at night,
Oh, you're saying the Flap relationship fell
yes.
apart. You think you'd have to take longer to show that marriage falling apart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. You couldn't just go from like them being, him like having sex with her while the kid sits on the steps, to like cut to, he doesn't come home at night. Like I feel like that is a bridge too far in the storytelling that we, especially from a major studio, that we tell now, because it is like we kind of hand feed
Yeah.
audiences stuff, and that was more of like, wait, what happened?
Right.
Oh, I have to fill in the blanks, like, oh no, and I love that. I mean, as an audience member, I'm like, what happened in those years? And you do feel an investment, but also you are challenged, I think, as a viewer to create your own story of what happened in between. And maybe that's just me as a writer. I see it that way.
Yeah, I think what's so great about this movie is he's really trusting you, not just with the information, but to just have your own feelings about things. And I think the best example of that, this is another part of the movie that I just didn't remember. But there's a whole, I mean, you want to talk about episodic, Deborah Winger's affair with John Lithgow, which I think, first of all, I have to say a couple episodes ago, we covered Blowout. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. John Lithgow's,
Million years ago,
okay, well,
yeah.
John Lithgow is a psycho in that movie, as he's been in a lot of things. So I wrote down like, nice Lithgow. And I remembered him being in this movie. Well, I guess I didn't remember, but, it was just nice to see him being a nice guy. And, but with dimension, but I love the fact that she has an affair with this guy. And of course it's justified because her husband is a philandering piece of shit, but that's like not the only reason. It isn't just like, oh, I'm just doing it for revenge. It's
And she
just,
says that.
Yeah.
She actually says that. She says, I'm glad I don't know if he's actually having an affair because I wouldn't want to be doing this out of revenge.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. She doesn't know for sure. I
Yes.
mean, she finds out later.
Yes.
That's right. She finds out
Yeah.
when Flap is flirting.
But she genuinely
Yeah.
cares for him.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I thought was amazing that you never see was and adorable and comedic and so real is when she's stuck in the bathroom talking to him on the phone,
Uh-huh.
and her son comes in and pees and she's like, don't flush, don't flush. and her son's like, but you always said I have to flush. She's like, shh.
Yeah.
But also he hears it and he's in the laundry room.
Right.
And you have this, and it's so silly, but it's so sweet because they're
Yeah.
so desperate to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And the best part about that is she then starts asking him about his sex life a bit because
Yeah.
he says, I haven't had sex in all this time because my wife has a disc issue. And she said, have you ever thought about her going on top?
Yeah.
And he's like, I have. And she's like, well, have you asked her? And what I loved about that is like, here is a woman who cares so much about this man that she's having an affair with,
Right.
that she also wants to help him and his wife have a better sex life.
She's being his friend.
Yes. And so they found a real connection, those two, that they weren't getting from their spouses.
Right.
That was so relatable for me.
Mm.
Like, as so many of my friends are married or divorced,
Yeah.
or some are having emotional affairs. Like, there's a lot of things happening when you get into your 50s and you have teen kids, and this felt so real to me
Right.
as what a emotional affair looks like.
Right.
And I don't think you'd seen it pictured that way before because because affairs were sex.
But they do, to be clear, they do have sex,
They
right?
do have sex.
Okay, I just want to make sure, just
They
to
do.
clarify the facts.
They do.
Right.
But that's what's so beautiful about the fact that phone call made it into the movie, because it was
Yes.
about the companionship and the connection
Right.
more than the sex.
Yeah, I think it's a great astute observation, is that, it's really less about, the sex and more about the emotional connection. And if this movie were made, if it were to be made in 2025, this whole thing might be happening over text.
Right.
It may not get physically consummated, which would be interesting in and of itself. I don't know, depicting that on screen would be a little tricky, but I do feel, because you don't, I love that the Lithgow character's married also.
Yeah.
And I love that they cast him, because he looks like a real person. He's not a bad looking guy, but like he's got a receding hairline, and like he definitely, and he was just really starting to pop in movies. I just read his memoir like about 2 months ago, and he doesn't go into the movies hardly at all, except for one of his first ones. But just the timeline of it, Lithgow would have been really only started making movies a few years before this. And then, you know, sort of, I think still jumps between movies and stage pretty steadily. So yeah, I do think, yeah, it is an emotional affair, but for the fact that it is consummated, but we never see them even in bed post-coital.
Yes.
You know, like we don't see, there's no sex in this movie, but there is that scene where, you know, Aurora's on the phone with Nicholson asleep next to her, and she's talking to Emma with her husband asleep next to her. So we don't even see Lithgow and Winger in bed together post-coital. And I think it's
Yeah.
a very deliberate choice. Because yeah, I think an emotional affair is the perfect way to characterize that.
And
So yeah.
and I think how affairs were how they were usually shown on film up until that point were sexual.
Yeah.
So Fatal Attraction, you know, the most iconic
Right.
affair.
Which is after this, but I was thinking of Fatal Attraction when you
Yes.
said it.
Yeah, and so what I thought of why going back to what we were talking about, the characters and being so like wildly flawed.
Mhm.
I did not fault her for a second
No.
for her affair.
No.
I faulted him.
The Lithgow character?
Yeah, no. I faulted
Flap.
Flap.
Jeff Daniels.
Yeah,
Okay.
like Flap
Yeah.
was a dickhead.
Yeah, we'll get to him.
Yes, but I did not fault for a second. And I'm somebody who, you know, I just I got it. I got it, and I so appreciated that you didn't need to see them have sex. It was probably dorky and a mess, and it
Yeah.
was probably like, and that's great. But we didn't need to see it because it wasn't about the sex. It was about the emotional support and connection between these two characters who are stuck with partners, life partners that don't give them what they need.
Yeah, and when Flap selfishly says, "Oh, now we're going to Nebraska," which on its face is bad enough, but my first thought is, "Oh my God." I don't even know Lithgow's name in the movie, but it's just like, oh, now she's going to lose him, and he does give them a goodbye scene, like
Yeah.
outside the restaurant, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and he says, "Oh, can I have a picture of you?" And she's like, "Oh, well, Flap's in it."
And he's like, "Great, that's fine."
She's like, "I'll take whatever."
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel bad. I mean, yeah, this collateral damage because Lithgow's going to go back to this unfulfilled life. And she, I mean, we know where she's headed. Well, we don't know where she's headed. If you've seen the movie, you know where she's headed, but you know it's not good because she's being uprooted again. And she didn't love being uprooted the first time because she was having to leave her mom, and that
Yeah.
was the first time that happens. And you can imagine, maybe it's even explicitly said, you know, Flap couldn't wait to get away from his mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Kind of can't blame him, even though I think Flap sucks, but like that relationship is so interesting. I think what's great, I mean, so much is great. I'm going to just keep saying that, despite the premise of this podcast. I think what's so great, though, if we're kind of talking about Flap, I think he does suck, but I do think they give him a humanity that makes him a real person.
Agree.
And I think Jeff Daniels, this is one of his early movies, and he's impossibly young in this movie. I mean, they all are, or younger. What I like about this character, and I think this is another thing where they would have made, I talk a lot about in comedies, but even sometimes in dramas where they take the antagonist character, which is Flap in this case. I mean, he's a character who's the most antagonistic, who almost all the bad things short of her getting cancer are because of him. They tend to make them so insanely evil and unlikable that you can't even see why they got together in the first place, which is where sort of like, that's like the Jenga block that has the whole thing tumbling down. But I think what Brooks does in the script and what Jeff Daniels does in the performance is that this guy's just kind of a moron, you know? Like, he's selfish, but he's not evil.
He's the original absent-minded professor.
Yeah.
You know? Like, he's that vibe. He's that like doofy, but like handsome.
Yeah.
Like kind of accidentally handsome.
Yeah.
You know, leaves his book places, always has stuff, you know, and so you kind of love him. You see why she loves him.
Yeah, you get it. They do have
He's
good chemistry.
lovable.
Yeah. But I love, and we can just jump around time-wise in terms of where we are in the movie, but just to stick with Flap, I love that by the time the story ends, he's admitting, I'm a terrible father. I'm too selfish to be a good father. what they need is their grandmother, who's a good mother. I mean, he doesn't say all this, of course, but this is all under, when Aurora says in the hospital cafeteria, Flap, you've always recognized your weaknesses. Don't lose that quality now when you need it the most.
Yeah, it's such a great line.
It's such a great line, and it's like on the one hand, it's like, well, she's really sticking it to him again, but I do think she's like being kind in a way because she's saying like, look, I love when characters can, I love when a character can have nuance when they can say something like, I don't like you, but, like, they can hold two thoughts in their head at once, like, because that's something I strive to do as a human being, to be able to say like, I don't like this person, but I will agree that they're good at this, or they had a rough childhood or whatever. So I think to see it in a movie, I think is a good role model to set. But I think that Flap sort of hears that, and I think he's admitting, like, I mean, he is admitting, I am not a good father. I wasn't a good husband. I mean, he's about to become a widower, and he abandons his family, but I think for the better. And I think at the funeral, I know I'm jumping right to the end, he's sad. I feel for him, even though, because I think he's carrying a lot of guilt of like,
totally,
her death has nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
She got cancer and it's horrible. It's nothing he could have done. But I think Flap's next 40 years plus are going to be rough because he's going to be carrying this with him, and he might become a better person. And I think if it was written as like, I'm just an asshole, or worse, if they made him physically abusive, I could see that temptation of like, oh, Flap she'd have to have like a black eye. And I don't want to make light of that, but like we've seen there's a lot of, there was that road here.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't read the book, but there you could see that note coming from his studio head, like, well, could Flap hit her, or could Flap be more verbally abusive? And that's just not realistic. I mean, those things do happen, of course, and those things should be depicted, but I think it's just like, he's just absent. He just sucks. And even the infidelity, it's so almost beside the point. Like when she catches him talking to that woman, he's like, I was just flirting with her. It's like, yeah, I mean.
But the best part about that moment is when he's clearly flirting with her. They're clearly talking about, if they haven't slept together already, sleeping together.
Right.
And when she catches him and he turns, he's got a baby strapped to him.
Brilliant.
And it's brilliant because you're like, this guy is he's like, talk about flawed. Like, he doesn't even see what's wrong with that.
Yeah.
Like, forget what's wrong with, having an emotional affair. But then on top of that, to have your baby strapped to you while you do it. Yeah. I mean, that's another level.
Yeah. What's just coming in my head right about now? I'm wondering if you made this connection. I'm willing to bet you did. Because I want to pivot to we haven't really talked about Jack Nicholson yet. I think that the Jack Nicholson character, who I'm guessing has never been married, doesn't have any kids, it's almost like, and I'm wondering if tell me if you agree with this. This is hitting me right now. Is he Flap 15, 20 years in the future?
No.
You don't think so?
No, not at all. No. I just think they're such different animals.
No, I'm saying like just the station in life that, like, I'm not saying that, like, I think Garrett is a much, as it turns out, kinder, warmer person.
Yeah.
But just in terms of like, could Flap become Garrett in terms of, you don't think so?
No. And here's why. Why I think they are such. It's like men are from Mars, women are from Venus. It's like Garrett is from Mars, and I think of them as such totally different types of men.
Okay.
This is Flap was a man who was like way too young. Obviously, I'm going to marry this, probably the first woman he ever had sex with, who, and who, had a real physical connection to, and who thought he was the bee's knees, and had never been seen that way before, and loved that he wanted to be a teacher, loved that was it, and he was like, this is what life is. I don't think Garrett ever thought life was family, life was kids. I think Garrett was like, I'm gonna become a fucking astronaut, I'm gonna go to the moon, I'm gonna be a hero, I am going to be worshipped.
Yeah.
And why would I need a family when I can have the world worship me?
Yeah.
And what he comes to is something very different then I think, what Flap comes to, and actually almost opposites,
Mm,
because he, at the end, Flap realizes that the family he thought he needed to have, he actually is better without.
yeah. And they're better
And
without him, more to the
and they're
point.
better without him.
Right.
Garrett thought he was better without a family and being hero to all. And what he seemingly, the notion is at the end of the movie, is that he is better at this older age,
Mhm.
is finally ready for a family, and that is how he's going to become the real hero.
I think, yeah, I guess the way I phrased it was faulty, but I think you actually made the connection. I do think there's a connection between these two characters, but I think you actually just laid it out more eloquently than I did. I do think that Brooks is trying to show us, because they're the only two men in this movie.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess the character palette. I mean, I guess Lithgow, but Lithgow's part is so small.
Yeah.
I mean, once she leaves, we don't see him again.
Right.
So he's really only in about 20 minutes of this movie tops.
Yeah.
Maybe less than that. Um, yeah, I guess I was trying to make a connection, which you did for me. Thank you. Between Garrett and Flap. And I think what's interesting is, to kind of murder this point, is not the first scene, but there's a scene I love where, and I think Aurora sees this. Like, Aurora's at a dinner party and she's with this really boring boyfriend and the DeVito character. And I think she says something like, "Don't worship me till I've earned it."
Yep.
And I think she just walks outside of the house. I may have the timeline of this confused, but then this car with these two young women roll up, and and Nicholson falls and hits his head, and this one young woman is like, "I thought I was going to meet a hero, and you were flirting with us." And he's so pathetic in that scene. And do I have this right? She's watching this happen, right? So
That's
I
right.
almost feel like, I guess I'm gonna just try and make this connection one more time. Is I almost feel like that could be Flap in 15 years, just in terms of like chasing younger women and then maybe not being interested anymore.
Right.
I feel like, putting aside the family thing, I feel
Yeah.
like that's because I think that Garrett gets to a point, because when we first see him, it's at a distance and there's like these really young women leaving his pool, and then like one stays over. So he's having this, I don't know if it's hedonistic, but he's definitely having this,
Yeah.
he's very sexually active, and these women are all much younger. And so yeah, I think there's something to that.
But I don't think for Flap, I think Garrett was a real playboy. That's who he was. That was how he identified himself. I don't think Flap ever identified himself as a playboy.
Right. He doesn't have Garrett's confidence.
He doesn't have that confidence. And I think what happened is he became this professor, and these younger women showed, and I am like, in my mind, Flap was like a dork in high school. And so this is the first time, and then he got married, right? Out of whatever, high school, college, whatever it was, college.
They're very young, yeah.
Very young. And so they're 23, 24. And so then this is, he's now, in his early 30s. And he's got these, graduate students. They said they're graduate students who aren't that much younger than him.
No.
Who think he's a god.
Yeah.
There is a point for a guy like Flap who, is suddenly worshipped by all these younger, attractive women.
Yeah.
And seen as perfect, whereas at home it's like, did you change the diaper? Did you do this?
Yeah.
Did you do that? It's like, to answer your question in terms of like 10, 15 years from now, is he still chasing skirts in the way that, Garrett is? I don't think he ever chased skirts. Garrett did.
Yeah.
Garrett chased them.
Right.
I don't think he ever did. I think he was really excited that they came to him because he was their professor.
That's interesting. Okay.
That's
no, I think you're right.
I'm pushing back. I'm sorry.
No, push back. No, that's what this show's about. This is something that occurred to me as we were having this conversation. So, another thing, I mean, this is the second, so in our first season, this is my second time having Nicholson on the beat, because we covered The Departed in the first season.
Yeah.
And we're going to see him again whenever I do the 70s for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and he'll come up a
my
lot.
God. Yeah.
But Mike Nichols said this great thing. I think Alec Baldwin said that he asked Mike Nichols who was the best actor he ever worked with. And he said this interesting thing. He said, Nicholson because he has no vanity. And that really came up a lot watching this movie, because he's overweight and I mean, he's always been kind of been going bald. And I think I won't use the term brave, but I do think that there's something so interesting about, you know, his role in this movie, which is sometimes it's comic relief, but I do think that the relationship that he has with McClane, because they seem so opposite, and I think it's charted. The emotional journey of their relationship is charted so well because, like, when he first asks her out, it's so like, well, I can't bring one of my young girls, so maybe you want to go, and you see why she like doesn't like this guy,
Yeah.
and I think,
But she's also interested from the very beginning.
but because
She's
what she says to
interested.
DeVito,
Yeah.
don't worship me
Until I earn it. Yeah.
and her other boyfriend, these guys just worship her, and she's
Yeah.
bored.
Yes.
And here's a guy who's not going to worship her, who's going to kind of call her on her shit, like she calls him on his shit. And I think that relationship is just so beautifully charted.
Yeah.
And, we're kind of beating up on studio executives, boo hoo. You could see someone saying, like, okay, well, you got to choose. Is it about the mother and the daughter, or is it about,
right.
or is it about this woman and her husband, or is it
Yeah.
about this woman and her neighbor?
Yeah.
And I think that almost pound for pound, equal weights given.
Yeah.
You never get the sense that one of these stories is taking away from the other, and that's such a magic trick.
Yes.
Because it's done badly so much.
Yes. Well, even like their date, right? Where they go on that date and it's so funny.
Yeah.
And it's, and it's like comes in with so much confidence and you could tell she spent 5 hours getting ready.
Sure.
And then she's like, a real woman knows how to, prepare for every situation. And she is not prepared for that convertible.
Right.
And it was the scene in the car on the beach, which is such an iconic scene, right?
It'll be the GIF that when I post for this episode, that's the GIF that I'm going to be posting.
Yes. And what I love about that is if you're looking at the actual writing of that scene,
Mhm.
the levels go and the turns it takes are it's something you don't see every day because you see the exhilaration, you see the fear, you see the excitement, you see the attraction, you also see the especially from Garrett, like the pulling back of everything. And then, when there's a moment right before he kisses her in the water where she has this beautiful moment where she just smiles.
Yeah.
And you're like, and she's like, and you see like in her, like what I saw was like, this could work.
Yeah.
She's
into
just
it.
like a moment
Yeah.
of this could work. And then he tries to freaking feel her up.
Yeah.
And then, it gets stuck in there.
Yeah.
And then it's the thing. And
Very
then
funny.
it gets ruined. And if you look at just, how the twists and turns of that one scene is just amazing. And it's funny, like I think about if you wrote something like that now and what the response would be like, well, could you bring the car that far into the water? Like what would there's such a there's such a emphasis now on, what's real.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's just have fun.
I did have that thought fleetingly, like, oh, would water crack the engine block? But I mean, it's like it's on the line, but it's not like I don't bump on it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's one of the few. I mean, this movie's well shot and well staged, but it's not. It's one of the few sort of like kind of muscular images in this movie is the beach scene. It's one of the few things that's like where it's like action.
Yeah.
Not like action like buildings blowing up, but like just like action, but it's also still speaking to character. You're learning a lot about him.
Yeah.
This guy. And this is sort of touched on later in the movie where she's like, why do you have all this astronaut stuff up? Like it's kind of pathetic.
Yeah.
And it's similar if he were a football player or if he were a movie star who was like on the wane. And it almost doesn't matter. The astronaut thing I think is interesting, and I can only assume comes from the book, but it really doesn't matter. It's just like his former glory that he's coasting on. Because Nicholson's only 46 years old here.
Yeah.
And younger than I am now. And obviously, the thing is, he's still a really pretty young guy.
Yeah.
You know?
I I was really interested in the astronaut trophy case that he
Yeah.
had constructed because honestly, she said, "Oh, this is what you put here to like impress." I think at the end of the day, knowing his character, that was there more for him than anyone else.
Yeah. I think it's probably both because those young women, he clearly that was I mean, he says something like, "Oh, you play the hand you have," or
Yeah.
whatever. Sorry for that shitty Nicholson impression, but like
That was good.
oh, okay. um, and I think that's what it is. I think that's what he led with. He
Yeah.
led with like, "Hey, I was an astronaut," and given the timeline, he would have been on one of the Apollo missions.
Yeah.
They're kind of vague about that, but just given that this is 80, well, actually, it's the late 70s because it's not even contemporary. So
Right.
he's definitely the right age to have been like a young guy on one of those famous Apollo missions. Uh,
And nobody works in this movie. Like no, if you think about it, like nobody
well,
works.
Flap does,
Well, Flap does. Flap has as his professor slash
right?
meeting young girls.
But the women
job.
don't. The two main women don't, and Nicholson doesn't.
Yes,
Yeah, which is interesting. I guess.
he's coasting off of his
Yeah, I don't know what-
astronaut salary.
I don't know. We can blow our brains out and see what houses in Houston cost back
Yes,
then. It's probably like
exactly.
a basket of blueberries. But
Yeah.
So quick behind the scenes thing. Do you know who turned down Nicholson's part?
No, who?
I want to preface this by saying I think he actually would have been really good.
Okay.
Burt Reynolds.
Oh yeah,
I think he would have been great.
he would have been great. But
I'm not taking anything away
Yeah,
from Nicholson.
yeah,
He wasn't
yeah.
an Oscar for this, but I think Burt Reynolds, and they're about the same age. I think Burt Reynolds, at least on paper, is almost better casting because he's like an ex-football player. He's a kind of like a tough guy.
he's also a little more like. I don't want to say likable because everyone,
Yeah.
loves Jack Nicholson.
Yes.
But less like Jack Nicholson can have like a wicked
Yeah.
side
Yeah.
and or does have a wicked side and that and that's part of what is so charming about him.
Yes.
But yeah, it would be a slightly different movie.
Yeah, and I don't want to nickel and dime Nicholson, but Burt Reynolds said in an interview that was the stupidest decision I ever made in my entire life. And the performance wins the Oscar, not the role. And I wouldn't change a single actor in this movie, but that's the only casting thing that I know of where they went to someone else first because he was really like a huge box
Yeah.
office star. This is
Yeah.
like pretty much the height for him. I
What-
think Nicholson's an inspired choice, but Burt Reynolds was kind of a perfect choice. If that
I'm
makes sense.
curious, like, do you know, and I haven't done this research and maybe I'll do it after if you don't know, but like, what made this movie a hit in terms of who went to see this movie? Do we know if it was like all women of a certain age or
I don't know, but here's the thing. I mean, just given how I was very little when this came out, so I didn't see it when it came out, but given movies back then, I don't think it would have made, well, what did I say? Made over $120 million.
yeah,
And that's not accounting for inflation. So that's tripled it now.
yeah.
I mean, I think everybody went to see it. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure it's skewed heavily to women,
Yeah.
but women brought their boyfriends and brought their husbands. and-
Yes.
I mean, here's the thing. If only one gender goes to see a movie, it's not going to be a hit. It's
Yeah.
just not going to be a hit. And the thing, at least that's my opinion. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, if things are going to skew heavily more toward
Titanic might prove you wrong.
but Titanic was 4-quadrant. Titanic,
Yeah.
and we're going to cover that on the show, is the best
Yeah.
picture winner. Titanic, I'm glad you brought that up. Titanic
Yeah.
is maybe the perfect example of 4-quadrant because there's a love story, which I'm going to speak very stereotypically here. It's got a love story which appeals to women.
yeah,
The last hour of that movie is an action movie. It's the
Yeah.
boat sinking. It's special effects. That appeals to
Yeah.
men. It appeals to young people for the love story and the action. It appeals to old people
Mhm.
for the historical drama and the romance. So, I mean, Titanic
Yeah.
may be the best example of a 4-quadrant movie of all time.
right. But
He's
I think
doing all
what
of it.
blew out all the box office was the teenage girls going back to
110%.
watch Leo DiCaprio 6 times.
Yes. Well, I mean, yes, that obviously put it over the edge.
Yes.
It was young girls going to see it again and again. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what that is for this.
Yeah.
I don't have that information.
Yeah. I was just
Um,
curious because
We lived through
unlike-
the Titanic thing.
Yes.
We were alive for this movie, but
Yes.
I was 5, so
Well,
I don't remember.
So I mean, think about if this movie as it is made was released in theaters
Today?
today,
Okay.
who would go see this movie? Like it just, I mean, I might, but also I don't get out much. So
Right.
this movie, if it came out today, would be in the theaters for like 2 weeks and then go right to streaming.
Absolutely. They don't let things play in theaters, which theaters would like.
Yes.
Because back then, I remember, oh, I heard about this movie. Let's go see it. But that could be like 2, 3 months before it
We
happened.
looked in the newspaper
Yeah.
for the showtimes.
That's what my dad used to. My dad used to sit down with the newspaper and he'd circle a bunch of shows.
Yeah.
And my dad definitely chose movies. My sister pointed this out. My dad chose movies based on what time they started, not what they were. So I saw all kinds of
Yeah.
things, good,
Yeah.
bad, everything in between. And it was rarely about, sometimes it would be like, oh, I want to see, I like this actor,
Yeah.
or I like Mel Brooks or Woody Allen has a new movie out. So sometimes it would be deliberate, but a lot of times it was, oh, this is starting in a half hour. This is starting in an hour.
Right.
We're gonna choose this because I have to go to work after or whatever.
Well, I remember that. So I would obviously go to the movie theaters. I grew up in New York City, but then there was Video Room, which was on 3rd Avenue, and they delivered videos like to your door.
What?
Which was like
Oh
crazy.
my God.
And we had an account there. And
bet you did.
you called up.
They
or
delivered
you-
it to your door?
They delivered it to your door, or you could they would like call you and say you're on the wait list for this thing, come in, and we would like run over to get the thing, and literally it said it said Be Kind Rewind, which
Yeah.
is a movie my husband produced actually.
Oh, did you
And-
really?
Yeah. And
Is that Michelle Gondry?
yes.
No, yes,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I remember that
exactly.
movie. Yeah.
But I mean that was real. Be Kind Rewind.
remember Be
was
Kind Rewind.
Yeah, on all the videos. And I remember going into Video Room. This is pre-Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Going into Video Room and seeing the way that the videos were separated by theme or genre and
Right.
and the new releases, and it was like my temple. It
Yeah.
was so great to go in there. But again, like it was the beginning of, I guess, the very long end and still not end, and hopefully never an end to the actual theatrical viewing of things.
Yeah, I mean, I still love going to the theater. It's a different experience for me now because I'm going with my kids, which I do love.
Yeah.
Even if it's something that I don't want to see. I mean, and there are good kids movies. There's even beyond the Pixar realm. I mean, Pixar's obviously sort of at the top, but yeah, and my kids like going to see movies. A lot of it's snack based, but my daughter is definitely into movies. I still love going to the movies.
Yeah.
I still think that it's like my favorite thing to do. I don't think that's ever going to completely go away. I'll talk about one of my sunnier moments because I think Kevin Smith said this great thing about like going to the movie theaters, like people who like vinyl, like vinyl went away. We're old enough to remember that. And now it's back. And I think that there's some people are going to want to have that experience. And I don't think it's ever going to completely go away. I think the thing that like the era we're talking about right now, the 80s in general, movies were the center of pop culture. There was no internet. TV was still three networks. There were big TV shows, but the center of pop culture were movies. I mean, music's in there too. So I think movies were just a lot more important than they are now, sadly. And I think that the constriction has just made everything worse. But
Yeah.
a woman dies really young in this movie. That's sad enough. We can let's focus on Deborah Winger dying really young in this movie.
Yeah.
We really haven't talked much about Deborah Winger. So yeah, Deborah Winger is fascinating because pretty much the first half of the 80s, she's kind of a box office star, and it's predicated entirely on her talent. She's a good-looking woman, but it's not about, she's not like, oh, she's hot, so she's getting,
Right.
like these roles. Like it's complete, like Meryl Streep, who's already, at the top of the mountain at this point. Deborah Winger's get like her role in Officer and Gentleman, without knowing the casting of that movie, I'm sure that was sort of an offbeat choice, because she's ethnic, she's Jewish, and they have her opposite Richard Gere, who's like, a fucking Greek god, good actor too. I'm not pissing on Gere, but I think the fact that like, she gets this role at this key point in her career is really significant, and I think that she contributes a lot to why this movie was a hit.
Mhm.
Because Shirley MacLaine's a respected actress, but to a younger generation, going back to your question from a few minutes ago, I think Deborah Winger is like a real lodestar here.
Well, I think also what struck me about her performance was the subtlety of it.
Yeah.
The way she processed some of the things that the dysfunctional things that her mother would say,
Yeah.
which is a very specific type of mother-daughter relationship, and I totally got that. And and also how she dealt with her children,
Mhm.
how she dealt with Flap and her suspicion about him.
Yeah.
There's a moment once they're in Iowa, Idaho,
I think it's Iowa.
Iowa.
I think it's Des Moines. I think they're in Iowa.
Yeah.
It's Nebraska. They moved to Nebraska. I think it's Iowa.
And she is there and she sees the woman who she had seen before.
Oh, that's in Nebraska.
Oh, okay. So they're in Nebraska now.
Right.
So they're in Nebraska and she sees the woman from
Iowa.
And she chases after her and she says, excuse me. And then finally she says, don't make me chase after you. I have a toddler.
Yeah.
And I loved that because it was, and I really think that spoke to her character, even in that moment where it's like, I don't know that I would think that clearly if I saw the woman that my husband had just moved our entire family
learning that
to a different state. I don't know that I would be able to think that clearly and say, don't make me chase after you. I have a toddler. And so I think there was so much restraint in her performance. I think she could have played it much bigger.
Yeah.
Everything. And I think by not playing it bigger, by playing it so subtly, I think that's why that role worked and was so moving. Even and I meant to say this earlier when we talked about her goodbye with John Lithgow. Like, it was very sad,
right?
Obviously, and you could tell she was heartbroken, but she, again, there is that subtlety, and I think that she's not like, her mother was the dramatic one. Yeah. And she was the one who had to keep it together for her mother.
Yeah.
And then what happens and so you see her doing that in her marriage. You see her doing that when she has to leave this man who she's fallen in love with, who she's having an affair with. And then you see it at the end when she has to say goodbye to her children. And that's that moment where her mother grows and her mother learns from her daughter about subtlety, about think about when she said, my daughter's in pain, this lack of control, this, wild,
give my daughter the shot.
Yeah.
Give my daughter scene. Yeah.
Give my daughter the shot, give her the shot. And I mean, as a mother, I and as a mother of a daughter, I was in tears watching that because I was like, that's exactly how I'd do it.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately where we got to in that very, very quiet scene in which she takes her last breath while she's like looking at her mother is I think her mother finally learns to take on some of that lack of spectacle. And that parenting doesn't always have to be about the fireworks.
Right. I think it's interesting. You're making a really great point that I think that the Aurora character grows also. And then you could definitely make the argument, which I think you're making, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that the Aurora character learns more from Emma than Emma learns from.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think that, because you don't get a sense of intentionally Emma's father, Aurora's husband, not really talked about. You get the sense that he was a perfectly fine man. He died. Maybe he died a little younger than they were expecting. I don't quite have that at my fingertips right now, but you definitely see um, Emma's influence over Aurora, and I think that's kind of unusual.
Mhm.
You definitely, I think it's just an unusual thing. It's certainly an unusual thing in life. It's definitely not something I can think of too many movies or even any movies.
But also that Emma forgave her mother for missing her wedding. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot of women out there
that would be
who,
it.
if their mother missed their wedding, that would be game over.
That would be the entire movie. It would
Yes.
be an entire movie of that would be a note you'd get also. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, can we make this movie about, this woman trying to make up to her daughter that she missed the wedding as if it's like a
It
man.
was a blip. It was
Yeah.
a blip, which like that's a very specific type of character who like can bounce back from that.
Yeah.
I think that the Deborah Winger character was so resilient in
Yeah.
that way. With her dad dying and dealing with like a kind of crazy mom.
Yeah.
And then and so it was in a lot of ways she was the caregiver to her mom. She was the mom to her mom. And then at the end, her mom had to become not just the mom to her daughter, as she always should have been, but to her daughter's children.
Yeah. And we're kind of dancing around it. So let's talk about
Yeah.
the most powerful scene in this movie, which is her death scene.
Yeah.
Or not her death scene, but the scene where she has to say goodbye to her kids.
Yeah.
I mean, the the actor who plays Tommy, the oldest son, I don't know his name, is so. I mean, kid acting is tough. We see more bad
Yeah.
versions and good versions,
Yeah.
but that scene is. I mean, it's the saddest scene in this movie. A movie that's largely comic, even in serious moments. I mean, but once she gets sick, I mean, there are some lighter moments within it, but what she says to her son, like, "You're angry now, but I just want you to know that I know you love me." I'm not going to do the dialogue.
Yeah.
But you know the scene. Obviously, you know
Yeah.
the scene. Remember
Yeah.
the scene where she died? But
Yeah.
yeah, I just think that that's so powerfully done, and I think that Brooks sidesteps. Well, rather, he doesn't make the mistake I think he makes throughout the movie is I don't like the music in this movie. I don't like the score. I think it's too light. I think it's too treacly. I think there's too much of it.
Mhm.
But in this scene, there's no music.
Mhm.
I'm like, thank God.
Yeah.
And because I could see that impulse of like, oh, we have to
Tell
unders-
people how to feel with music.
And I think that scene is I mean, if you have kids, you can put yourself in her position. If you've lost someone, if you've lost your parents, I lost my mother and my father, you can put yourself in that position. I mean, this is what I'm saying about the whole movie, that everything about this is relatable.
Mhm.
It would be so much work for this movie not to be relatable. You'd have to be living in a shack in the mountains to look at this and be like, I can't relate to any of this.
Yes.
There are those people, of course, but
Yes.
for 99% of us, this movie's relatable almost regardless of what age you are, like what station of life that you're in. If you're a grandmother, if you're a daughter. But yeah, I think that scene, he just plays it. Well, she plays it rather. It's her putting makeup on and just trying to look the best she could look. She's not crying during it. It's restraint. You use the word restraint. I think that like sums up her performance in this so well. I mean, she does have some sort of volatile moments, but just sticking with this scene, it's so. And then you see right after, McLean, she slaps the grandson and then immediately is like, no, this is not, I can't be this person anymore.
Yeah.
You definitely get the sense that she slapped her daughter.
Yes.
And which was widespread. I mean,
Yes.
you could say,
That's
that
what he
hasn't
did.
aged well,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like that's how it was.
That's
But you
true.
see immediately before her daughter's even gone, like, I can't be this person anymore.
Yeah.
I have to channel my daughter, be like her daughter, just running with your point, like right
Yeah.
outside,
Yeah.
because that whole stretch is just, it's just gut wrenching.
Yes. Yes.
But it's not, and I say this a lot on this podcast, the movie doesn't crumble under the weight of its own miserability. And I think that there's a version of that. Even taking aside like what a studio might say, you could see a filmmaker, you could see the temptation of a filmmaker to like, oh, I really got to like hammer this home.
Yeah.
And this is, and I think that because there's so much humor and there's so much of this movie is so real
Mhm.
that this really powerful moment is just, I mean, it's devastating. I can't
Yeah.
think of another word for it.
Yeah. Well, and I want to go back to just part of what you were talking about with the makeup, and you said that she wants to look as good as possible for her kids. And my takeaway from that was that it was her friend Patsy,
Uh,
who was like, we gotta deal, like because right before they come in, she starts taking it off.
oh, that's right. She takes the lipstick off.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I think she wanted, because she's like, I look ridiculous. Like, she also wasn't a woman who wore a ton of makeup.
No.
So it was more, I felt that scene was her letting Patsy do this for
her.
because
Yeah, that's a good point.
She thought that it was more about Patsy than about her wanting to look a certain way for her kids. Yes, she didn't want to look like she was dying, but I, as a mother, I can tell you, it would, like, I would want, maybe, like, I wouldn't want them to be scared of me, but I also, and how I look.
Right.
But the amount of makeup that she put on did look scary.
Right.
And so I think it was more about
For Patsy.
like letting her friend feel like she was doing something to be helpful.
Right.
And I think that's also the beauty of the Deborah Winger character, and the beauty of her subtlety is, like, she knew her friend needed this and needed
Right.
to touch her and to do this. And that's a real, like, I don't know, I think for women to brush each other's hair, to do each other's makeup, there is, gosh, it's so intimate.
Right.
And so I think there was that aspect of it. And then she tries to take it off.
Right.
And then her kids come in, and what was, what was interesting to me watching it this time around was I really focused more on the mother-daughter relationship. And maybe it's because my kids are a little bit older, but I felt much more connected to Aurora's experience
Interesting.
than Deborah Winger's experience, even though I'm probably like closer to Deborah Winger's experience in terms of the ages of my children.
Right.
But I, as the mother of a daughter, was just horrified at the idea of having to watch my adult daughter pass.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I was responding to, versus this idea of, what if I died leaving my kids without a mother?
Right.
Like, I worried so much more, and maybe that's just me being completely self-involved.
If I were, I guess well, I don't know. I guess I'm in the same thing like you, because I'm older than the Nicholson character, but I'm in a flap stage of life because I have smaller kids.
Yeah.
So I never watched this movie and related to Flap, but I probably was, the first time I saw this movie, I probably was like closer to him in terms of like his age and where I was maritally and with family and stuff. So yeah, I think the fact that you're thinking about Aurora more, because this movie is about both of them.
I also want to mention, talking about the death, I really loved the choice and the way it was shot of the actual, like, moments, that their last, looks at each other.
Right, when she dies.
And that, when she dies, and that Flap is asleep.
Yeah.
And that is a metaphor for their whole relationship, and for him as a character. He's just like asleep at the wheel.
Right.
Like, it's not that he's a bad person, really. Like, he's a loving, kind of like dopey guy, but that's it. He's asleep.
Yeah, he has a line, I think, before Emma dies, when Flap comes pretty close to just the self-actualization of, I know who I am. And maybe he always did. I mean, this movie's not about him, nor should it be.
Yeah.
But he said something, I wrote this down, who am I if I'm not failing Emma?
Yeah.
It's like, he's not.
But I feel like a lot of men who are married feel that way.
Right.
Like, and I think that is part of marriage is like, it's like, and and women talk constantly about like, the invisible labor and all this stuff. So it's like the men constantly feel like they're failing and the women feel like they're doing too much.
Right.
And that's always been.
Yeah. And I love, to go back to one thing we talked about earlier, but I think it relates to here. I love the fact, and this only passed in my mind fleetingly, she never confesses about her affair with Lithgow, nor should she. And I feel like that might be something that some studio exec would bump on. Like,
yeah.
oh, there should be this almost deathbed confession, and it just doesn't matter. And she does tell her mother about it, which is interesting. And I don't remember exactly what the scene is, but the mother's like, well, this man's not available, which is perfectly sound argument. She's never
Yes.
met the Lithgow character. But I love how adult that is, like how it just like how real that is. Cause like,
Yeah.
what does it matter?
Yeah.
Like she wouldn't, it would make no difference. It might piss him off, but how pissed off would he be if she's literally dying?
Yeah.
And I just love, it's such a small, like I'm praising a movie for something that it doesn't do.
Yeah.
But I could just sort of see, this might be a weird comparison, but I love, in Presumed Innocent, you've ever seen that movie?
Yeah.
How they never tell you how Harrison Ford is busted for having the affair. Now, I've read the book, and the book makes that very clear, and it is interesting, but I love how the movie just trusts you to know, like, he got busted in one of two or three ways.
Right.
But I just think, just not to make this all about the Lithgow character, but I just love the fact that she had this affair, it ended because she left, that's it.
Yeah.
We never even see him again.
No.
And
she never talks about him. She doesn't, lust after him. There's
she doesn't
no
pine
phone
for
calls.
him.
No.
There's no phone
No.
calls. There's no contact.
No, she moves on.
And and I thought of just fleetingly, it's like, oh, he's gonna learn somehow that she died. However, that information would get back to him. It might be years because there's no.
Yeah, he didn't show up at the funeral.
He probably doesn't even know that she died.
Yeah.
I had that thought. I'm like,
Yeah.
he probably does not know that she got sick, that she died. 'Cause
Yeah.
think about it, it's 1983. There's no internet.
Yep.
They're not in contact. To his credit, he never even says, oh, can I call you sometimes?
Yeah.
He knows it's over.
Yeah.
Which I think is very, very mature also.
Yeah.
He knows this is done.
Yeah, if it were this day and age, they could follow each other on social media. They
Right.
could have FaceTime sex. They could do there's a
The emotional
number-
affair could continue.
Of course,
and
yes.
you would also get to know, like, what if Lithgow shows up to be at her bedside,
Yeah.
and like he and Flap get in a fight or something,
No,
like,
what's beautiful about this movie, and you said something like this earlier, is the restraint and the subtlety and the trust in the audience and the trust in its own storytelling and in the performances.
yeah.
That they don't need to spell everything out.
Yeah.
And it's just, and because also in life, not everything is spelled out all the time.
Yeah, well, you characterize this movie as messy, I think, and I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think this is very real, and I think episodic is fair because this movie doesn't have a plot, but it's a drama. It's not.
Yes.
If you were to like do a synopsis of this movie, like these assholes always want a one-page synopsis, probably wouldn't seem all that interesting.
Yeah.
It'd be like, she doesn't go to the wedding. They move. She has an affair. They move again.
Yeah, like what's the inciting incident?
Yeah,
What's the thing?
This is a movie about relationships and about behavior.
Yeah.
And these movies, it's interesting because, in the 80s, the Best Picture winners, just to kind of, like Ordinary People is scale-wise is very close to this. It's a very small character palette. It's about relationships. It's about behavior. Chariots of Fire is a historical drama, a little smaller. I had never seen it. It's a little smaller than I thought, but still bigger than this. Gandhi is a biopic. It's a huge 3 hour plus movie. They seem to be kind of like in these Best Picture winners, almost oscillating from small dramas to big dramas, just in terms of the scale. Because this follows Gandhi, and this really couldn't be a more different movie, just in terms of its scale. I mean, Gandhi is a biopic.
Right.
It's covering this guy's whole life. It has a lot of intimate dramatic scenes like this, but like the stakes, I mean, we're just talking about like, mass genocide and hunger strikes and all these like weighty things. I mean, it's one of the things that's sort of innately silly about the Oscars. That might be a great way to pivot to categorically denied. So before we get to Best Picture, Let's see if Terms of Endearment was worthy of the other 4 Oscars it won. So, James L. Brooks won Best Director for this. He beat Peter Yates for The Dresser, Ingmar Bergman for Fanny and Alexander, Mike Nichols for Silkwood, and Bruce Beresford for Tender Mercies. What are these movies that you've seen that you remember? If you haven't seen any of them, that's okay. But against these guys, if you've seen these movies, if you remember them, do you think that James L. Brooks deserves the Best Director Oscar?
Right. So the only one I saw of those was Silkwood, and I
Okay.
haven't seen that in like 15,
I tried
20.
to watch Silkwood. I couldn't find it anywhere.
Really?
I really wanted to. It's always been on my list. And when I saw that Mike Nichols was nominated, I really wanted to. Yeah, it's not streaming anywhere. And like the Blu ray is like
It's-
$9,000.
Oh my
and
God.
Yeah.
I like
it's-
that you have Blu-ray. I mean, I loved this movie, so
Let him keep it.
yeah,
That's fine.
Yeah, let him keep it.
Yeah, I've not seen all these movies, but I did watch The Dresser and Tender Mercies, which we're gonna get to. Both of these are also up for picture, so I'll get into those in just a minute. But yeah, I think of this crew that I've seen, I'd let Mr. Brooks keep his Oscar. This one's actually going to be really interesting, connected to this movie. So Shirley MacLaine wins Best Actress. She beats Jane Alexander for Testament, Meryl Streep for Silkwood, Julie Walters for Educating Rita, and most crucially, she beats Deborah Winger for Terms of Endearment.
Oh my God.
So do you want to just talk about MacLaine versus Winger?
Sure.
Or do you think that one of these other 2 performances is better than both?
Again, I haven't seen all of them.
Yeah.
Meryl Streep always, so
throw a dart.
amazing. Yeah. But
So let's talk about, because we don't really have this opportunity, as I opened with, Shirley MacLaine versus Deborah Winger. I agree these are both lead actresses. I like that there was no category fraud here. They didn't put
Yeah.
one of them in supporting,
right,
which is what they would definitely do now.
100%.
And it wouldn't even matter which one.
Yeah.
So what do you think? It's just MacLaine versus Winger, or do you not even want to?
I mean, look, I think it's a toss-up. I think you
Yeah.
could make really good arguments for both of them. I think the splashier role is the MacLaine role.
Okay.
It's just bigger, like
Yeah.
bigger, not bigger like amount of time on screen. I just mean like, we talked earlier about how subtle, Deborah Winger's, performances and the way because she has to be in their relationship. She kind of, she's the shock absorber, right? And Shirley MacLaine is the shock.
Yeah.
And so I think that it makes sense to me. Both performances deserve an Oscar, but it makes sense to me that Shirley MacLaine would have gotten it. You have those iconic scenes that we talked about earlier, like give her the shot, give her the, the painkiller. And I think that there's all these also beautiful scenes for Deborah Winger, but I understand why she would have gotten it, but I think it was a toss-up.
I think it's a bit of a toss-up also, because I think that you could argue that Deborah Winger has the death scene. Not that that's like Oscar Batianet. I think it's really well done, but you could argue you could kind of counter argue that like Deborah Winger has, the death scene and does play with more subtlety. I think between these 2 performances, it is kind of throw a dart, because the movie's perfectly counterbalanced between the 2 of them.
Yeah.
When they're not apart, we're never with one more than the other. And that's something I think structurally it's a really sound movie. And then when they get back together, physically back together, I think it's, it's so powerful, because what's bringing them together is the fact that she's terminally ill. So yeah, I think that I'm glad that they didn't do any category fraud, because that's really what it would have been. This thing is sort of a bugaboo of mine, where people talk about like when 2 actors are nominated for one movie, they always talk about, oh, well, they split the votes. This proved that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't mean that MacLaine is the better performance, but I think people, for probably the reasons that you just cited, probably preferred her.
I also think that there's no difference, that each actress so supported the other one's performance.
Absolutely.
And so fed into that performance. And I say that for both of them.
Yeah.
That, I mean, they really both should have gotten it.
Well, it's like Thelma and Louise.
Yeah,
Neither
yeah.
one of them won. And
They probably canceled each other out.
I don't know though, because that's Jodie Foster for Silence of the Lambs.
Oh,
and
yeah,
she's
yeah.
so great in
She's
that.
so
And so
great.
I don't think, but that's the first time I remember hearing that, because I remember those Oscars.
Yeah.
And I'm only comparing it because it's like Thelma and Louise about both of them.
Yeah.
So you got to put them together. But yeah, I just think the vote splitting thing is a little bit of a conspiracy theory, and there's no way to know until they release the results.
Right.
So yeah, I think we kind of agree on that. So best supporting actor, Jack Nicholson beats Charles Durning in To Be or Not to Be, John Lithgow for Terms of Endearment, Sam Shepard for The Right Stuff, and Rip Torn for Cross Creek. So what of these that you've seen? I know you've seen Lithgow. What do you think of these that you've seen that you remember? Does Jack Nicholson get to keep his Oscar?
I think Jack Nicholson keeps the Oscar.
I think so too. Lithgow's terrific in this. It's a much smaller part.
Yeah.
I love that he was nominated.
Yeah.
Because I love when people are nominated, even if they're not in like a ton of the movie.
Yeah.
I think that's very cool. And he's a terrific actor. To Be or Not to Be is a movie I've seen. Charles Durning's a great actor. I just don't remember him being all that great in this movie. I just saw The Right Stuff. Sam Shepard's interesting in that.
Yeah.
I don't feel that's the performance I'd award in that movie.
Mhm.
All due respect to Sam Shepard. So adapted screenplay, it beats Betrayal, The Dresser, Educating Rita, and Reuben. What are those movies that you've seen that you remember?
None of them.
Yeah, I've seen The Dresser. I would give the adapted screenplay Oscar to Terms of Endearment. I think that, but yeah, this screenplay is really. We've
Yeah.
talked a lot about this.
Yeah.
So let's see if this movie brought out the devil in us. It's time to test our hindsight with the verdict. So
Yes.
against The Big Chill, The Dresser, The Right Stuff, and Tender Mercies, was Terms of Endearment the best movie nominated this year?
In my opinion, I think so. I think this, for me, the second choice would have been, you just said it, and I'm
Big Chill?
The Big Chill, which was, I mean, for me, I just loved that movie so much.
Right.
And it was, I don't know, it just really, I think showed such a specific time and moment
Yeah.
for a certain generation. And I still to this day, whenever I think about writing an ensemble piece, I think about that movie.
Right.
You know, that said, I see why this one won.
Right.
And I think it deserves it.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I like The Right Stuff too. I don't remember. I haven't seen it in so long. I don't remember it.
Yeah.
very
So
well.
I watched I hadn't seen Big Chill. I'd seen. I had not seen The Dresser, The Right Stuff, or Tender Mercies. I watched them all for this podcast. I think The Dresser is an interesting movie. It's very, it's about you're sort of backstage with this theater troupe in England during the war, and it's almost like Birdman in a weird way, because it's like very much focused on like this theater experience. And it's an interesting movie, 2 really good performances. Both the leads in that movie are nominated for Best Actor. Right Stuff, really fantastic movie. Really was not a hit, unfortunately, but it was well represented here. I think if you're a fan of like Apollo 13 or The Show for All Mankind, The Right Stuff is sort of the first one of those. Tender Mercies, which Robert Duvall won an Oscar for, and the screenplay, it won original screenplay. He's really great in it. It's a really interesting movie. It's kind of reminds me, if you know the movie, what was the movie with Jeff Bridges? Crazy Heart? Remember that movie?
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
Tender Mercies is a huge influence on Crazy Heart. In
Okay.
fact, I think Duvall shows up in that. But my best movie nominated, I would also go, my best movie nominated, I'm going to go with The Big Chill. For the reasons that you said, I think I like this as scooch more than
Yeah.
Terms of Endearment as far as these nominees. I think that, you kind of summed it up already with like just ensemble casts. I
Yeah.
think this is like a great ensemble cast movie, much more of an ensemble than Terms of Endearment, because there is no, Terms of Endearment has 2 main characters that share the lead. Big Chill is what, 5, 6, however many of them there are.
Yeah.
They're all kind of the lead. It's perfectly counterbalanced. Even though this was made in the early 80s, I think The Big Chill is something that's relatable now. If you're like in your early to mid 30s and you're sort
Yeah.
of thinking about like, who was I in college? Who did I think I was going to be when I was in college versus who I
Yeah.
am now? Because these characters are all like 33, 35. They're all really young.
Wild.
I mean, yeah, I think they're only like a decade or so out of college, my understanding. They're not really specific about it, but I know the actors are all early to mid 30s tops. I think the oldest person in this movie might be 35, which is kind of crazy to think about. But do you know what the title The Big Chill means? Because I didn't.
No.
So Lawrence Kasdan, he was talking about how he was sort of friendly with this guy. You know, they would have lunch together, and the guy expressed an opinion that Lawrence Kasdan didn't agree with, and that seemed very, very antithetical to this guy's character. And the big chill is just like kind of what fell over him when he realized, like, oh, this guy's not someone I really want to be friends with.
Oh.
And it's this idea that, like, who do these people become? You know, the movie is more deep than that. It's like, oh, these people that I was very close to, would I be friends with them now? I think it's a
Right.
huge part of that movie.
Right.
Would I be friends with you if I met you at 35?
Right.
Versus when we met when we were 18 and we were kids. And I think that that's, you know, they don't even really get into politics in that movie. You know, you don't see people arguing about, because that's just not something we were doing in the 80s.
Mhm.
I mean, there are people who love Reagan and hated Reagan, but Reagan wasn't as divisive as, you know, some of our political figures now. So, yeah, really a great year for dramas, though. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Terms of Endearment and The Big Chill and Right Stuff is a drama, but obviously is more epic because it's got like space stuff and action stuff. And so I think this is a fairly strong crop of Best Picture nominees. The Dresser's kind of a strong flavor, but I think if you're interested in theater, particularly British theater, I think the acting in that's really strong. So, Jordan, let me ask you, was there a movie you liked, whether it was nominated or not, in 1983 better than Terms of Endearment?
I think just the only other one for me, like looking back, is probably The Big Chill.
Okay.
Yeah. Which was another like favorite movie of all time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my best movie of 1983 is Brian De Palma's Scarface.
Oh.
Yes, perhaps predictably given my race, gender, and ethnicity.
Yeah.
This was a decent sized hit, but it was very much dismissed critically when it came out. Roger Ebert, to his credit, did give this 4 stars. He was one of the few critics who kind of got it right away, as he often did. He's my favorite critic. What's interesting about this movie to me, though, is that it was underrated and then achieved this cult status. This is a huge movie in the hip hop community. And I think it may have become overrated in the wake of that. And I'm wondering if it's going to yo-yo back to its proper place in people's minds. I can't speak to any of that. But I do think that this is the reason I hold it in such high esteem, is that I feel like the great gangster movies, you know, you have The Godfather 1 and 2, Goodfellas, and I would put this right behind those. And it's not an accident that Al Pacino is the star of The Godfather and the star of this, even though he's completely different in this movie. Yeah. So I think that Scarface is one of these things that, because there's so much like, you know, like this poster was on every dorm room wall, including my own, when I was in college. And it was already an old movie by then. It was already like a decade plus past it. But what's interesting is we just did an episode on Blowout, which is Brian De Palma's early movie. And I said on that podcast that was his masterpiece, but the movie didn't do well. And he said this really interesting thing, that he said that directors have to sometimes get away from themselves. And that's what Scarface was for him, because he didn't know anything about Cuban gangsters in Miami. Yeah. And it was this open assignment, this big studio movie that he got himself onto. And it's probably the most famous movie of his career. It's debatable. It's either this or Untouchables. He did the first Mission Impossible movie with Tom Cruise. So that's obviously the biggest hit of his career. But I also think it's an incredible screenplay written by a very young Oliver Stone. And I think it's one of the best things he's ever written. And it's like everything Oliver Stone does well. It's certainly not a subtle movie, but I think there's so much incredible dialogue in the movie. And it's so much smarter than it might look. Because what I knew about Scarface was it's like, oh, it's got this chainsaw scene, and it's like, you know, fuck is said at that point more than any other movie ever. That's been surpassed. I believe it's 182 times, which is why the band Blink 182 is 182. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if either one of those things is true.
Yeah.
That record's been far surpassed. And I think this is a really incredible Al Pacino performance. And I think he kind of encapsulates the reputation of this movie because it's a big performance, but it's not. We think about Al Pacino now, we think of him as being like big and yelling and screaming. Yeah. And I think this movie kind of gets lumped into that. And the character he's playing is definitely a loud person. Yeah. but it's still a very subtle performance. It's still a very terrifying performance. And I mean, I don't know that I really have to stand for Scarface, but I do think it should have been in this Oscar conversation. There was
Yeah.
no chance of that ever happening.
Yeah.
But I do think it's, time renders the ultimate verdict, which is sort of a theme of this podcast. So yeah, I think Scarface is the best movie of 1983.
Oh, wow. All right. Now I feel like I should go see it again. It's been like, 20 years since I saw it last.
I think,
so-
yeah, you should. I want to hear it. Yeah, let me know what you think, because I think you'll definitely see the violence and blood and, but I think it's just got a real brain under the hood that I think people just don't, even people who like it just
Yeah.
don't. There's a scene, I'll probably cut this out. So they re-released it for the 20th anniversary, which is already, so like 2003, they put it in theaters, and I went and saw it at the ArcLight in the Dome. And I thought it was going to be like this, not Rocky Horror, but like this very kind of like raucous screening of like filled with people who had seen the movie. And there's a scene in the movie where Al Pacino goes to the Michelle Pfeiffer character and basically kind of proposes to her. And it's the only scene in which there's no bad language, there's no violence, and it's like out by a pool, and it's really quiet. And it's the only scene in the movie where Tony, his character, is kind of self-reflexive. He's kind of like, look, I know I come from the gutter. I know I don't have an education. And the audience was so quiet. And I was like, oh, like they're getting all of this. Like,
Mhm.
and I think in a lot of people in the hip hop community, it isn't just that Tony Montana has like, he's like a dishwasher who like gets his big mansion and this like gorgeous wife. They understand Scarface, and they talk about Scarface like the tragedy that it is. Like it's a Greek tragedy. It's like, this is why he falls. This is the
Mhm.
mistake he made. So yeah, I'd love for you to see it again, and I'd love to hear what you think. So our next category is Spotlight. This is where we can spotlight something from any movie in 1983. It could be a performance, cinematography, score, a stunt sequence, any specific thing from a movie this year that you want to talk
I
about.
think I'll go back to what we were talking about earlier with Terms of Endearment,
Okay.
where, the car scene. I mean, the car scene, where they're after their first date.
On
when
the
they're on the
beach.
beach.
Yeah.
Like for me, that, that is such an iconic scene and image of, for me, like 80s cinema,
Yeah.
like that was such a, and I do remember when it came out and seeing that in the trailers and
Yeah, it was
seeing that,
everywhere.
and again, like that scene to me is so much more than a trailer moment,
Sure.
right? It is a trailer moment, but it is so much more than a trailer moment because of the different levels and the different places both of those characters and those actors go
Mm.
in a really short period of time.
Yeah.
So for me, if I'm looking at that year, that's the thing that was that really was most meaningful and most memorable
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's definitely that's one of the things before I saw this movie. That's the image that I knew.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the iconography of this movie is that scene. So I'm going to spotlight 3 things, and I'll be as brief as I can. But I want to talk about, so in our 1981 episode, the Chariots episode, I talked about how Tangerine Dream's score for Thief elevated it and gave it this kind of timeless quality. And I think many things about Risky Business tell us it's not another 80s teen sex comedy, but I think the score says it the most elegantly. And electronic scores are really booming at this point. You're starting to hear, like more synth scores. It's really like in everything. I think that there's something so elegant and deep about the score to this movie. I like the whole movie, but I'm just focusing on the music now. So I think that this is my favorite Tangerine Dream score. And for people who kind of like Scarface, people who think, oh, Risky Business is like this teen sex comedy, if you watch it, it's really more like The Graduate. It's
Mhm.
really much darker, much smarter, much even more tragic, despite the fact that the ending was reshot. But even the ending that's there now is still, I think, still has some tragedy to that. So that's my first one. My next one, so the pre-title sequence to almost any James Bond movie is always entertaining. But the pre-title sequence to Octopussy, which came out in 1983, I think is one of the few completely self-contained stories that they've told in less than 10 minutes. And for those who haven't seen it, basically Bond enters this Air Force base. He's in disguise and he's trying to destroy this Air Force base and he's impersonating somebody else. And that guy shows up. The real guy shows up and he gets arrested. He gets detained. And he's got to figure out how to like destroy this place. And how he does it, have you ever seen this one?
No.
Okay. You should watch, the whole movie's fun, but certainly watch the first, it's probably not even 7 or 8 minutes long.
Yeah.
So fun, so great stunt work. And yeah, so Jordan hasn't seen it, if you listening have not seen it, check out the whole movie, but certainly the opening is one of the best openings they've ever done. It's just so inventive and completely self-contained. Like nothing that happens in the opening 8 minutes of this movie has any relation to what happens for the 2 hours that follow, which is something I want them to go back to. Last thing I want to spotlight is an entire movie, and I think I put this last for a reason. So we recently lost Rob Reiner, and there's been a lot of, I'm sure you were a fan, as we all were.
Yeah.
So a lot
Still
of people.
am.
Yeah, still am. I shouldn't have said was. So the year after this, 1984, he made This Is Spinal Tap, and that's credited with creating the mockumentary, but he was beaten by 1 year. In 1983, by my account, the mockumentary was created by Woody Allen in a movie called Zelig. You know this movie?
It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Okay, so you know Zelig.
Yeah.
So Jordan knows it.
I always joke that whenever anybody is, I keep seeing in my life or in current events, like showing up in different places, I'm like, oh, it's Zelig.
Right.
It's always
so in the movie, Woody Allen plays a man named Leonard Zelig, whose need to be accepted is so big that he physically will transform to resemble whoever he's interacting with. So if he's talking to a black man, he turns black. If he's talking to a fat man, he turns fat. On and on and on. Which is a really funny idea, but what makes this movie special is the technical commitment here makes the jokes even stronger. This was shamefully Gordon Willis's first Oscar nomination, and Gordon Willis shot the Godfather movies. He shot All the President's Men. He shot Annie Hall. He shot Manhattan. And this was the first movie that he got an Oscar nomination for, which is shameful. Not that he got it here, but he didn't get it for all those other times. The immersion to the idea, the commitment to the mockumentary idea starts here. I'm sure Spinal Tap was being done at the same time, but we have to be fair. Woody Allen beats Rob Reiner by a year, maybe by a few months. I don't know exactly. So if you've never heard of this movie, you should hear of it. I think this is Woody Allen's most obscure masterpiece.
Yeah. It was one of my most favorites, and I refer to it all the time.
Yeah. So Jordan, where can people find you? Do you have anything you want to promote? Anything coming up? Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Jordan Roeder Author.
Okay.
My new book came out this past spring, is called Moms Like Us.
Okay.
You can find it at your independent bookstores. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it anywhere. And I'm adapting that now. So hopefully at some point you'll be able to tune in and watch it on some streamer or channel or something sometime soon.
Cool.
That's it for now.
Great.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun.
So much fun. You can find me on Instagram and on Letterboxd, both of them Edward Clow. As far as Letterboxd, I keep forgetting to mention this. So I'm going to release, when this episode drops, my top movies of 1983, and they'll be ranked. Terms of Endearment is on there. Some of these other Best Picture nominees are on there. All the movies I mentioned are on there. And I will have also done that for 1982, 1981, and 1980. I just wasn't doing it in those episodes. I forgot to mention it last week when we recorded Gandhi. So yeah, check out those lists. Those are kind of fun. I rank them, which is silly and pointless, but fun. And then you can also see me on, you can also find me on Vimeo. You can see some short films I've done there. And then if you have any questions you want to email or comments, you can email hindsightingquestions@gmail.com. And if I get enough of those, I'll do like a mailbag episode. So yeah, Jordan, thank you again. This was a great conversation. Next episode, Michael Prince and I return to 1981ers with Sharky's Machine. Till then, looking forward to looking back.